report be printed, and I'll put that
So
motion
I
first.
move the motion that the report be printed.
The question is that motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Now you have a subsequent motion that you wish to move that the Senate takes note of the report.
Yes, so I move that the Senate take note of the report.
And if you wish to speak, you can.
And I seek leave to continue my remarks. And I seek, yes, I wish to speak to it for 10 minutes.
You have the right, Senator Lyons.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So we got there. Okay. So this NAPLAN report has been a long time coming to the Senate, and it's with some pleasure that I table the report today and have it available for the public to have a look at and to see how much assessment was taken of the submission. So the committee received a number of submissions, both academic submissions from teachers, indeed submissions from schools, and submissions from academics. And as you would appreciate, the whole leading up to the introduction of an annual test has been a little contentious in Australia. But if I can go back before the test commenced in May of 2008, most states, well in fact all states and territories in Australia were already conducting tests around literacy and numeracy. And of course we tried to initially look at how we might make comparisons across those differing tests across the states and territories. And of course, as I'm sure the Senate can appreciate, that was an impossible task because the tests were just too different to be able to really be of any objective analysis of the state of student outcomes across the country. So in 2008, the NAPLAN test, which is a test that is administered across the country and in both primary and secondary schools at years 3, 5, 7 and 9, was introduced. And that test tests across 4 core areas of reading, writing, language and literacy. And the test results are available some 4 months later. And certainly the submissions that the committee received went into great detail, and it's obvious that the test is of great interest to both parents, schools and universities, particularly those that have education as part of their fraternity. And there were many issues raised with the committee, going from the view that students were nervous before the test and that could somehow impact the results. We had a number of submissions that told us that that teachers were really moving away from a broad commitment to school learning and were teaching towards the test, from those who thought that NAPLAN was a very good diagnostic tool. So it is fair to say that the committee received a great depth and breadth of interest from everyone concerned with education. And as we should be concerned, it is critically important for us in the parliament and for everyone concerned around schools to make sure that the investment we're making in schools is the best it can possibly be, and that we ensure that student outcomes are as good as we can get them. And it's important to remind ourselves what the educational goals of NAPLAN were, and they were to ensure that Australian schooling promotes equity and excellence, and that all young Australians become successful learners, confident and creative individuals and active and informed citizens. I mean, they are 2 very good goals, very important goals, and certainly the committee was of the view that, generally speaking, that NAPLAN was working and that it was a good tool. So if we go further, it was felt that by some that there was too much of a gap between the time the test was administered and the test results were available. If indeed we are measuring the performance of our students, then those results should be available quickly so that appropriate diagnostic tools and measurements could be put in place in schools so that we don't just merely note the NAPLAN test, but that actually we use the outcomes of the NAPLAN test in a much more constructive way to enable good teaching to occur as a result of what the NAPLAN tests are telling us. And indeed, particularly across geographic areas where we've got a number of schools in local communities or large regional towns, I think we could do a lot more about looking at school performance and asking those schools that are performing well in tests what they're doing that enables their students to perform better in tests, as say, opposed to a school 3 or 4 streets away. And I think that is a second stage of NAPLAN, if you like, about how we really now do use those results of NAPLAN to really hone in on school performance. Because, as I said, they have been around now. NAPLAN has been around since 2008, and I'm pleased to say that the report today is supported by all sides of the senators that were involved in the development of that report, and I think that augurs well for the ongoing success of NAPLAN, that we are able to say, well, regardless of perhaps our differences, and those differences are at the margins, we all believe that it's an important diagnostic tool, that certainly the results need to be available much more quickly. And as we see NAPLAN now move to an online test, there's no reason why we can't get those results back to schools as soon as possible. And so I think the next stage for us is to really say, well, how do we really take those tests and use them to improve student performance? So how do we look at what is happening in a particular area across a state? Indeed, comparing with other states, which NAPLAN already does, that we can do is look at like for like across the country. And where we've got really good pedagogy happening, where we've got good test results, then how do we share that? Because education shouldn't be occurring in a competitive environment. We want all students to succeed at school, regardless of their background or where they live. So NAPLAN ought to be, the results of NAPLAN ought to be able to be used to really dig into why some students in some schools perform better at NAPLAN than others, and then how we bring everyone up with us, how we use those results to improve all students' performance. So, of course, for parents, they can measure where their child is performing against a national average. And as I've just gone on to say, we can look at how a local school is performing against schools in similar areas and in similar circumstances. And so for me, the next step really needs to be then how do we take excellence and make sure it is shared right across our community. And I think the other piece that the committee's been at pains to stress is that NAPLAN in and of itself can't improve student performance. It measures student performance, but the actual improvement to student performance rests with quality teaching, with quality teacher training, with good pedagogical leadership in the school, with good principals who are willing to look beyond their own school gate, to look at the school down the road that maybe did better than them, say in the area of literacy, and investigate why that happened and what they can do to make sure that the next round of NAPLAN that occurs, that they are doing as well as the other schools locally. So the committee believed that at a macro level the objectives of NAPLAN were clear, but the evaluations of their effectiveness at that level are relatively meaningless. It's not really the macro. The macro is there perhaps for governments to look at. It's really at the micro level, at the school level, that those results can be most effective, and that is where certainly where parents want NAPLAN to be effective, and I think where the community really wants to see those NAPLAN results being absolutely targeted, analysed at school level and developed much more fully. There is no point in doing national testings if the results come back to school and they sit on a shelf and get dusty. That is not what we want to see. It is about improving school performance, and certainly I commend the report.
Thank you, Senator Lyons.